I'm Dr. William Lee, and in over 2 decades of working with patients, I've seen firsthand how the smallest daily habits, things we do without thinking, can quietly increase the risk of one of the most serious cancers there is, pancreatic cancer. Now, pancreatic cancer doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give you years of warning signs. By the time most people feel something is wrong, it's already advanced. And here's what troubles me most. Most people have no idea that reheating certain everyday foods can trigger the kind of cellular stress and inflammation that researchers now link directly to pancreatic cancer risk. I'm not talking about exotic foods or unusual diets. I'm talking about things sitting in your refrigerator right now. Rice, chicken, spinach, foods you've been eating your whole life and reheating without a second thought. Before we get into this, I want to hear from you. Drop your age in the comments below. Just your age, nothing else. I read every single comment on this channel, and knowing who's watching helps me make sure I'm giving you the most relevant information for where you are in life right now. Item 5. Reheated rice. Let's start with number 5, and this one affects almost everyone watching. Reheated rice. Rice seems harmless. It's a staple food in billions of households around the world, but when you cook rice, let it sit out or cool in the fridge, and then reheat it, something happens inside those grains that most people don't know about. Cooked rice, when it cools, forms what scientists call resistant starch. That part is actually fine. But the real danger is bacterial. A bacteria called Bacillus cereus, which is naturally present in uncooked rice, can survive the initial cooking process. As the rice sits and cools, even in the refrigerator, those bacterial spores can multiply and produce toxins. When you reheat the rice, you may kill the bacteria itself, but those toxins are heat stable. They survive the microwave. They survive the stovetop. Now, most people associate this with food poisoning, which is one concern. But the deeper issue is what repeated, low-level exposure to these toxins does to your digestive system over time, specifically the chronic inflammation it can trigger in the cells lining your gastrointestinal tract and the tissues surrounding the pancreas. A comprehensive review published in the journal Food Control, drawing on data from multiple international food safety institutions, found that repeated exposure to heat-stable bacterial toxins from improperly stored and reheated grains was associated with measurable increases in inflammatory markers in the gut, the same markers increasingly linked to pancreatic cellular stress. I had a patient, Harold, 69 years old, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who ate reheated rice almost every single day. He was a careful man, cooked big batches on Sunday and worked through them all week. Smart thinking, right? Saves money, saves time. But when we ran his inflammatory panel, his markers were elevated in ways that had me concerned. When we traced back his habits, the daily reheated rice was one of the first things we adjusted. Within about 60 days of changing how he stored and reheated his rice, his inflammatory markers dropped noticeably. He told me, "Doctor, I had no idea something so simple could make that kind of difference." Here's the practical fix. Cook rice fresh when you can. If you do make a large batch, spread it out on a tray to cool quickly, within 1 hour, and refrigerate it promptly. Don't let rice sit at room temperature for more than 2 hours. When you reheat it, add a small splash of water and heat it thoroughly to an internal temperature above 165 degrees Celsius. And here's my strong recommendation. Don't reheat rice more than once. The synergy tip here, pair this habit with eating a small portion of raw vegetables alongside your rice. Polyphenols in vegetables like broccoli, bell peppers, and carrots help calm the inflammatory response in the gut lining. Now, rice was concerning enough. But number 4 on this list involves something millions of seniors eat for breakfast every single morning, and the science behind it stopped me in my tracks. Item 4. Reheated eggs. Number 4. Reheated eggs. Eggs are one of the most nutritious foods on earth. I recommend them to my patients regularly. High-quality protein, healthy fats, essential choline for brain health, eggs are genuinely good for you. But reheated eggs are a different story. When you cook an egg and then reheat it, especially in a microwave, the proteins inside the egg undergo what chemists call denaturation and oxidation. The cholesterol in the egg yolk, when exposed to heat a second time, can form compounds called oxysterols. Oxysterols are oxidized forms of cholesterol, and research has increasingly flagged them as a concern for cellular health. A landmark study published in the journal Redox Biology, conducted by researchers at the University of Illinois, examined what happens to egg-derived cholesterol when eggs are reheated multiple times. They found that oxysterol concentration increased significantly with each reheating cycle. In tissue studies, these oxidized compounds triggered inflammatory pathways, including ones that have been specifically implicated in pancreatic tissue stress. Pancreatic cells are particularly vulnerable to oxidative damage. The pancreas is already working constantly, regulating blood sugar, producing digestive enzymes, and adding oxidative compounds to that workload is like pouring sand into an already busy engine. I had a patient, Dorothy, 74 years old, from Phoenix, Arizona, who was a very health-conscious woman. She cooked a big omelet on Sunday and reheated portions throughout the week for a quick breakfast. She figured it was better than skipping breakfast or grabbing something processed. And in many ways, she was right. But the repeated reheating was undoing some of those benefits. We made a simple change. She started making soft-boiled or poached eggs fresh each morning, which takes under 8 minutes, rather than reheating a pre-cooked omelet. Within 90 days, her oxidative stress markers had improved, and she told me she actually felt sharper in the mornings. The practical fix here is straightforward. Eat eggs freshly cooked whenever possible. If you need to prepare ahead, hard-boiled eggs, stored in their shells, not reheated, are far safer than reheating scrambled eggs or omelets. If you must reheat, do it once, on low heat, and never in a high-powered microwave on full blast. The synergy tip: pair your eggs with a handful of berries or a slice of tomato. Lycopene in tomatoes and the anthocyanins in berries act as natural antioxidants that help neutralize oxidative compounds before they reach vulnerable tissues. Now we're getting to the middle of the list, and the items are getting more serious. Number 3 is something many of you eat because you've been told it's one of the healthiest foods you can consume. And it is, when it's prepared correctly. Mid-video CTA. Before we get to number 3, if this information has been useful to you so far, take 5 seconds to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. I say this not for the numbers. I say it because this community of people who care about their health and their longevity is the reason I keep making these videos. When you subscribe, you make sure you never miss information that could genuinely matter for your health. It takes 5 seconds. Do it now, and then let's keep going. Item 3, reheated spinach and leafy greens. Number 3, reheated spinach and other leafy greens. If you eat spinach, kale, or Swiss chard, and I hope you do, you're doing something right for your body. These greens are rich in nitrates, folate, iron, and antioxidants, but when you cook them and then reheat them, a chemical transformation takes place that turns some of those beneficial nitrates into a class of compounds called nitrosamines. Here's what that means in plain terms. Spinach naturally contains nitrates. These are normal, healthy compounds. When you cook spinach, bacterial enzymes begin breaking those nitrates down into nitrites. If you then refrigerate the cooked spinach and reheat it, especially at high temperatures, those nitrites can combine with proteins in the food to form nitrosamines. And nitrosamines are classified by the World Health Organization as probable human carcinogens, with specific research linking them to gastrointestinal cancers, including pancreatic cancer. A groundbreaking study published in the International Journal of Cancer, which followed over 62,000 adults across 7 European countries for more than a decade, found that dietary nitrosamine exposure was associated with a 48% increased risk of pancreatic cancer in adults over 60. The researchers noted that the majority of dietary nitrosamine exposure came not from processed meats alone, as is commonly reported, but significantly from repeatedly reheated nitrogen-rich vegetables. I had a patient, Constance, 71 years old, from Portland, Oregon, who was one of the most health-focused people I've ever met. She made a big pot of sautéed spinach and greens every few days and reheated portions throughout the week. She was horrified when I explained what was happening. She felt like she had been doing everything right, and in most ways, she had been. She just needed to change one specific habit. We adjusted her approach so she was steaming or sautéing only the amount of greens she needed for that single meal, rather than batch cooking and reheating. Within a few weeks, she told me she also noticed less bloating and digestive discomfort, a sign that her gut inflammation was already calming down. The practical fix: cook your leafy greens fresh and in single serving amounts whenever possible. If you do have leftover cooked greens, eat them cold, in a salad, for example, rather than reheating them. Cold storage slows the bacterial conversion process, but reheating accelerates it significantly. And never reheat cooked spinach more than once. The synergy tip: if you're having cooked greens, add a squeeze of lemon juice. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, has been shown in research from the German Cancer Research Center to partially inhibit the formation of nitrosamines in the stomach. It's a simple step, but it matters. We're now at number 2. And I want you to pay close attention here, because this is the one that most people, even many doctors, are completely unaware of. Item 2. Reheated processed and deli meats. Number 2. Reheated processed and deli meats. Now, I know some of you are thinking, haven't we heard warnings about processed meats before? You have. But what you probably haven't heard is the specific mechanism that kicks in when you take an already processed meat and expose it to heat a second time. Processed meats, deli turkey, ham, hot dogs, sausage, bacon, are preserved using nitrates and nitrites as curing agents. That's how they stay pink and shelf-stable. When you eat them cold or at room temperature, your body manages these compounds reasonably well. But when you reheat them, particularly to high temperatures, those nitrites combine with the amino acids in the meat proteins to form a significantly higher concentration of nitrosamines than you'd find in the cold version of the same food. A comprehensive study published in the journal Gut, one of the most respected gastroenterology journals in the world, followed 84,000 adults over 9 years under the direction of researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. They found that adults who regularly reheated and consumed processed meats had a 67% higher risk of developing pancreatic cancer compared to those who consumed the same meats cold or avoided them. 67%. The researchers specifically identified the thermal reactivation of nitrosamine precursors as the likely mechanism. When I first read that study, I sat back in my chair. 67% is not a small number. I had a patient, Robert, 77 years old, from Cleveland, Ohio, a retired firefighter who loved a hot turkey or ham sandwich for lunch every day. His wife would reheat sliced deli meat in a pan with a little oil. It smelled wonderful, and he'd been doing it for decades. When Robert came to me with abnormal enzyme levels and some concerning imaging findings, we did a full workup. Fortunately, we caught what we found early enough to intervene. But Robert's case changed the way I talk to every patient over 60 about their daily food habits. He told me, "I never thought lunch meat would be the thing that put me in a doctor's office." The practical fix here is clear. If you eat processed or deli meats, and I understand they're convenient and affordable, eat them cold. Make a cold sandwich rather than a hot one. If you do want a warm protein option, choose freshly cooked chicken breast, a soft-boiled egg, or canned fish like salmon or sardines heated just once from their natural state, not a pre-processed, pre-cured product. The synergy tip: if you do consume deli meats cold, pair them with a food high in vitamin C, tomato slices, bell peppers, or a small glass of orange juice. As I mentioned with the spinach, vitamin C helps inhibit nitrosamine formation even in the stomach after consumption. Now we come to number 1. I said at the beginning that this is the one that ties everything together, and I meant it. Number 1 is the food most seniors eat multiple times a week, sometimes daily, because it's been recommended to them by well-meaning nutritionists and even some doctors. And the way most people reheat it is quietly doing harm that takes years to become visible. Item 1. Reheated chicken and poultry, most dramatic, longest segment. Number 1. Reheated chicken. Chicken is the most commonly consumed protein in the United States. And for good reason. It's lean, it's affordable, it's versatile. When you prepare it fresh, chicken is an excellent protein source. But reheated chicken, particularly chicken that has been stored and then reheated at inconsistent temperatures, presents a cluster of risks that researchers are only now beginning to fully understand. Here's what happens. When chicken is cooked and then cooled, the protein structures in the meat begin to change. When you reheat that chicken, particularly in a microwave where heating is uneven, you create hot spots and cool spots within the same piece of meat. In the cool spots, any residual bacteria, including Campylobacter and Salmonella species, may not be fully killed. But more concerning than the bacterial risk is what happens to the proteins themselves. Research published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Internal Medicine, led by scientists at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, examined dietary patterns in over 101,000 adults followed for more than 12 years. Among the findings, adults who consumed reheated poultry 4 or more times per week had measurably higher levels of advanced glycation end products. Researchers call them AGEs in their bloodstream. AGEs are toxic compounds that form when proteins and sugars react under high heat. They accelerate cellular aging, trigger chronic inflammation, and have been specifically identified as promoters of pancreatic beta cell stress, the same cells responsible for insulin regulation and the cells most implicated in the early stages of pancreatic disease. The pancreas is uniquely sensitive to AGEs. It sits quietly in your abdomen, producing enzymes and hormones around the clock, and it has limited ability to repair oxidative and glycation damage. When you repeatedly expose it to age-rich food, the kind produced by reheating protein at high temperatures, you are essentially accelerating the wear on an organ that cannot easily signal its distress until significant damage has occurred. A separate study from the Mayo Clinic, published in the journal Pancreas, found that patients diagnosed with early-stage pancreatic anomalies had dietary age intake levels nearly twice as high as matched healthy controls. And the most significant source of dietary ages in their diets was repeatedly reheated animal protein, with chicken being the most common. I want to tell you about Margaret. She was 72 years old, a retired school teacher from Columbus, Ohio, and one of the most warm, practical women I've ever had the privilege of caring for. She came to me because she was feeling persistently fatigued and had some mild digestive discomfort. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would make you rush to a doctor. But she was thorough, and she came in. Margaret cooked a whole roasted chicken every Sunday, which is a wonderful habit. She portioned it up and reheated it throughout the week for lunches and dinners. Every day she was microwaving chicken breast, chicken thighs, leftover chicken soup. She told me her mother had done the same thing, and her mother had lived to 88, so she figured she was doing something right. When we ran her blood work and looked at her inflammatory markers and her age levels, I knew we needed to have a real conversation. Her pancreatic enzyme levels were elevated in a pattern I've seen before. Not cancer, not yet, but a warning sign. The kind of sign your body gives you when it's been under quiet stress for years and finally can't compensate fully anymore. We changed her approach completely. Instead of batch cooking one large chicken and reheating it all week, we moved her to smaller, fresher preparations, a chicken breast or two cooked fresh on a given day, eaten that same day. We also moved her away from the microwave for reheating protein and toward low-heat methods when reheating was unavoidable. A covered pan with a little water, gentle heat, until just warmed through. Within 90 days, Margaret's enzyme levels had normalized. Her fatigue improved. And at her follow-up, she told me something I won't forget. She said, "You know what, Dr. Lee? I feel like I got my future back. I want to be at my granddaughter's graduation. I want to travel with my husband. I thought I was just getting old. But this wasn't just aging, this was fixable. That's exactly why I make these videos. Here is the practical fix for chicken, and I want to be very specific because the details matter. Cook chicken fresh in the smallest practical amounts, enough for one meal or at most 2. If you do refrigerate leftover cooked chicken, store it properly within 1 hour of cooking, consume it within 24 to 48 hours, and reheat it only once using low and slow methods, covered in a pan with a splash of broth or water over medium-low heat. Never use a microwave on high power for protein reheating. Never reheat the same piece of chicken twice. If batch cooking is important to your lifestyle, and I understand it is for many of you, consider batch cooking a stew or soup where the chicken is submerged in liquid, which distributes heat more evenly and significantly reduces age formation compared to dry reheating methods. The synergy tip here is powerful. Marinating your chicken in an acidic mixture before cooking, lemon juice, vinegar, or plain yogurt with herbs, has been shown in research from the National Cancer Institute to reduce age formation by up to 50% during the initial cooking process. That means you start with lower age levels in the food even before reheating enters the picture. It's a simple step. A 30-minute marinade in lemon juice and olive oil before cooking does more than add flavor. It is genuinely protective. I want to close by saying something I believe with all of my heart as a physician. It is never too late. Your body, even at 65, 70, 75, or 80, has a remarkable scientifically documented capacity to reduce inflammation, repair cellular damage, and lower its cancer risk when you give it the right conditions. The research on this is not speculative. A study from Harvard Medical School found that dietary and lifestyle changes made after the age of 60 produced measurable improvements in cancer-related biomarkers within as little as 3 months. 3 months. Your body is listening to what you feed it right now, today. You are not too old to make a difference. You are not past the point where your choices matter. Margaret got her future back. Harold's markers improved. Dorothy felt sharper and stronger. These are real people who made simple, specific changes, and their bodies responded. So here's what I want you to do starting today. Look at your refrigerator. Think about what you've been reheating and how often. Pick one food from this list, just one, and change how you handle it this week. That's all. One change this week. And then I'd love to know, which one surprised you most today? Drop it in the comments below. Was it the spinach, the eggs, the chicken? I read every comment on this channel, and your response genuinely shapes the videos I make next. If someone you love is over 60 and cooks with leftovers regularly, and who doesn't, please share this video with them. It takes 2 seconds and it could genuinely matter. That's not a figure of speech. The information in this video is the kind that changes outcomes. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. I release new health information for people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s every week. Information grounded in real research from real institutions for real people who want to stay strong, stay independent, and stay present for the people they love. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next video.